Ladies and gentlemen, we are now at the end of the year, and what a year it has been. Lots of stuff has happened this year, life has been moving along, and the channel has been doing great as of late, and I want to say a quick thank you to you guys for all the support throughout this whole year. It's been a big one for me, and also for new releases as well. Lots of great games have released this year, and I've had the opportunity to play many of the new releases from this year. In terms of quality, games have been incredible. From your indies to your AAA titles, there is a great game out there for anyone, and as I've done before, I like to rank them at the end of the year. But I haven't just limited myself to playing the newest releases, as I've played older games that I've never had the chance to play. So, like the past two editions of the best games videos I've made, this list will both be including new 2023 releases and older games from previous years as well. However, this time around, I think I played a lot more new releases this year than the previous, and since the quality from this year was pretty high, expect to see lots of 2023 games on this list. With the short introduction out of the way, I wanted to highlight some honorable mentions before we dive into the top 15. These 4 games on screen are the honorable mentions. These games were great games, but ultimately weren't enough to get onto the list. Dredge is a phenomenal indie, with its Lovecraftian writing carrying the atmosphere to great heights, and its fishing minigame and exploration led to some relaxing moments that could quickly turn dark. Murder of Sonic the Hedgehog is the best April Fool's game ever released, and for being a free title, it's a great 2 hours spent. God of War 2018, an incredibly moving story with emotional performances from its voice actors, with the only issue for me being the gameplay didn't really vibe with me throughout my whole journey. And finally, Omega Strikers was a fun MOBA with fun characters and a cool concept. These games are great titles, but with how stacked this year has been, both the older games I've played and the new releases, I just couldn't fit these onto the list. I also want to do one final mention of games that I think I would have liked from this year, but never got around to playing them. They will be shown on screen right now. Maybe they'll appear on another best games list some years down the line, but with that out of the way, let's start off the top 15 with the first big release of 2023, which proved to be a scary one. When I played Dead Space Remake all the way back in January, I was floored by how good the game was. Having never had the opportunity to play the original, this was my first step into the world of Dead Space, and I can't think of a better way to get started. The atmosphere on board the Ishimura is unlike any other, from the ambient sounds, the creaks as you cross the floorboards, to unsettling nursery rhymes. If the game was just a walking simulator, it would have been a great tension building game, but it's a survival horror game, meaning it's got more to it. Inventory management, different weapons, really disturbing enemies that can be dismembered limb by limb, and really great boss fights. But I think the strongest aspect of Dead Space, which links the whole experience together, is the plot. A plot filled with intrigue, twists, and despair. Dead Space is an amazing experience, and if you really like to get scared, I can't recommend this game enough. Dead Space was the first title that started 2 things this year: the start of the incredible quality of games coming later on in the year, and the start of one of the best years for horror titles, which I can say you'll be seeing more later on down the list. Now, swinging on to the next game, we have I know, a lot of people are going to be surprised to see this game as low as it is, but that's not a bad thing at all. Spider-Man 2 is an amazing game, a far better experience than its predecessor, improving on it in many ways, but for me, it just didn't hit the same highs as the games later on in this list did for me. But with that said, Spider-Man 2 does so much right. Improved combat with new moves, better level design, and far more competent enemy challenges. Great boss fights that are both challenging and hit the emotional tones, making them super memorable, and memorable is what this game is, because there are tons of moments and the characters that come to mind when I think back to this game. The first fight with Sandman, the introduction of Venom, the many Easter eggs that set up the future of the game, Kraven the Hunter, Peter donning the black suit with an incredible performance by Yuri Lowenthal, and the ending. From a technical standpoint, the game is superb, having the greatest fast travel system in gaming, and just normal traversal as well, being both super fast and, say it with me now, makes you feel like Spider-Man. I got the Platinum Trophy for this game, which wasn't that difficult, but it was a very fun experience overall, and an important improvement over the original. It was a lot more consistent. Donkey Kong Country, where to begin? It's a platformer that is still praised to this day, and having played it earlier this year, I understand why. Its level design still holds up to this day, with fun and challenging levels to complete, and the added challenge of collecting all 4 Kong letters, and opportunities to collect the balloons for extra lives, because those are necessary in a game as challenging as this. There are also gimmicks in these levels, from minecart rides, the light switch themed levels, to animal friends that change up the base platforming. However, the biggest factor that makes this game as good as it is are the straight up vibes. The game looks different compared to other games on the market at the time, and still to this day, with its distinct pre-rendered 3D graphics. The characters pop out, and with the lighting as well in some of the levels, make it look incredible, but the soundtrack. David Wise is the composer behind the soundtrack and has created some of the most iconic sounds in gaming, like the DK Island Swing to the rock-inspired Gangplank Galleon, but at the top of it all, we have Aquatic Ambience, a tune that fits the water levels but simultaneously feels comforting and nostalgic, bringing back memories you may have forgotten about long ago. Atmosphere is one of the most important factors in gaming, and Donkey Kong Country truly nails it. We are not quite leaving the retro side of things, as we're actually going to be going to a retro-inspired indie game, which in fact is going to take the top spot as the best indie game of this year. Here we have Sea of Stars is a love letter to classic RPGs from the 90s, taking inspiration from the best titles released during that time like Super Mario RPG and Chrono Trigger, timed hits in battles to increase the damage and improve defense, and removing random encounters by seeing enemies in the overworld are two examples of the inspiration taken, alongside the SNES sounding soundtrack with its gorgeous pixel art that looks like it could come from the 90s, but with a modern flair to it that makes it shine. Combat is a lot more engaging thanks to the implementation of a lock and mana system of sorts, making strategy a lot more prevalent. Its story too is also a classic homage to these RPGs, but one that I find to be a bit more interesting with its twist, and not sure how to describe it, but a narrative that kind of breaks time and space like some other stuff kinda did in the past. I'm not really sure how to describe it. Oh, and the characters, they are so entertaining, and writing is so good too. If you enjoyed RPGs like this back in the day, this one will have you smiling to yourself so many times. And if you haven't played a game like this, it also serves as a great entry point to get into the genre. I can't wait to see what Sabotage Studios have planned for next, but I'm certain it will be great. And once again, I just have to mention how good the soundtrack of Sea of Stars is. Man, it's just incredible, really, really good. And this is the point in the list where every game from 11th to 4th become really hard to rank. Depending on how I feel on a given day, some games could move up a few places whilst others may drop, but at the time of writing this is the list that felt the most right with how I felt about the games. So next up, we have a classic title. There aren't many 2D platformers out there like Sonic the Hedgehog 3 and Knuckles. Over the years, I've played through most of the classic Sonic titles, but one that I never actually got to playing was Sonic 3. With the Sonic Origins collection having dropped last year, I finally got to start Sonic 3 early this year, and man, I really loved it. The levels are both expansive and letting you explore the world, and also allowing you to finish them super fast, managing to strike a perfect balance between the two. It's got the secrets for completionists with well-placed secret stage entrances, and making it difficult to keep a high ring count if you aren't careful enough. The levels also look visually distinct from one another, but all flow very well into one another, thanks to the subtle storytelling and zone transitions. These small moments after each zone adds to the context of the game, and without a single word said, the game manages to tell a story which is so simple, yet so thrilling to follow as you run through them. The game also introduces Knuckles, who is really well characterized. The game really is a great achievement in the show not tell idea, but where my favorite element of the game comes in is the music. Angel Island Zone Act 1, which is just so much fun, the ominous and menacing sounds of Sandopolis Act 2, or that final boss theme. But above them all is Ice Cap Zone Act 1. To this day, there is no song that gives off the same vibe as Ice Cap. It's truly up there as one of the best Sonic songs ever, and it's a shame that it got replaced in the Origins OST, but other than that, Sonic 3 is a great game, and it was ahead of its time. And now, let's dive into the top 10. Out of all the games on this list, Super Mario Bros. Wonder was the toughest to nail down its placement. Why it was tough to find out exactly where it should go on the list, I don't really know, because this game is special. On this list, this game is up there as one of the most creative titles I've played this year. From its new take on the classic world design of previous 2D Mario games, to the animations that give life to every single movement you do, to the new power-ups that lead to some very unique ways to find secrets, and where the secrets themselves are really well hidden and require outside-the-box thinking, was super fun. But above all, the biggest way this game flexes its creative muscles are through the Wonder Seeds. The wonder effects from these seeds are some of the craziest switch-ups I've ever witnessed in a game. Levels can completely change perspective from side-scrollers to top-down, pipes can start moving around and start dancing, to the numerous music sections ranging from an opera performance to a metal raging concert. But this alone wouldn't make Super Mario Wonder the game that it is, because the level design here is superb. It's got levels that are great for beginners to get into the game, to harder challenges that put the most skilled Mario players to the test. Despite the game leaning more towards the easier side, the creativity on display in this game here shines. And if it's true that Super Mario Wonder did not have a deadline to get released, it really really does show. Resident Evil 4 Remake is yet another amazing horror game released this year, and although it might not be as scary as Dead Space or have a story as good as Dead Space, the overall gameplay loop and tension that the game creates is nothing short of masterful. Like the original, the game is a lot faster in pace, and now with the improved movement mechanics, which are better than RE2 Remake, it makes you far more capable at taking out the hordes of enemies, but also gives the enemies a lot more capabilities to take you out and fast, which adds to the tension. Level design is divided by these open areas and tight spaces, striking a perfect balance between both action and survival. Voice acting too was great. I loved Leon's voice in the game, but Luis, man, that guy's performance was a true highlight. The narrative changes were welcomed and fit well, and the changes that the game made, which can be clearly seen in the Separate Ways DLC, with bosses in different areas and change of order even, it's a super tight experience, and as a whole package is amazing. Is it my favorite RE title? It's close, as RE2 Remake still holds a special place in my heart, but that's just me, and this title is truly up there as one of the best remakes, period. When I played NieR Automata for the first time earlier this year, I was in awe. I'm not quite sure how to describe how I felt about the game, but it was something different. I'm kind of a sucker for dystopian/apocalyptic settings, and NieR's setting is just that. It's got these run-down areas where nature has grown in and taken control, so to speak, of what remains of mankind, to the carnival area that highlights the advancement that mankind have made, to the desert where man has struggled to set their footprint. Although the game is gorgeous, what makes it all the more beautiful is its incredible soundtrack. This soundtrack is truly remarkable. It's adaptive, and areas have leitmotifs that increase or decrease depending on what you're doing in a given area. Musically speaking, it just sounds so heavenly as well. City Ruins remains my favorite set of arrangements in the game, but Amusement Park and Bipolar Nightmare are both close second. If we take the walking simulator analogy that I made earlier on and apply it to NieR Automata, I would already love the game, but what increases the enjoyment I get from this game are the other RPG factors, the combat and the story stuff. Combat is great, combos are varied depending on what weapons you've got equipped and what set of weapons you've got equipped at the same time, where bosses also raise the challenge with the quantity of enemies and their varied movesets. It leads you to constantly adapt your skills and equipment, which is a fun loop, but the biggest, strongest, and best aspect in Automata are the characters, story, and philosophy of it. Man, these characters have so many layers to them, and how you get to see the different perspectives of the characters through New Game Plus and the different endings leads to some sad moments and room for philosophical thought. Add the many characters you meet along the way, from the main cast of 2B, 9S, and Adam for instance, along with the many minor characters so to speak, you feel compelled to learn more about them and dive even deeper into the side quests, which are super well thought out. NieR is a super deep game, and I hope to one day make a video about it, because this game is truly one of a kind. Moving on, we're going to go back to the 90s with this classic. Super Metroid is regarded as one of the pillars of the Metroidvania genre alongside Symphony of the Night, and I've got to say, Super Metroid, to this day, holds up extremely well. The controls are still super smooth, the levels are designed super well, with enemy encounters that pose a threat to boss fights that make you use every single ability you've got. From an action point of view, the game nails it. However, Metroidvanias have two parts to them, which lie under the genre of action-adventure games, and Super Metroid nails the adventuring aspect. From areas that telegraph what you need to use so that you can get back later on, through the heat damage or falling bridges, the game gives the player enough small hints to come back when they're better equipped to proceed with the story. I mean, just look at this room, it's very early on, ominous in its design, and considering we recognize the big dragon Ridley from the prologue, the game is asking us to beat these monsters to further the secrets of this room. This is just one of the many subtle details that Super shows to the player to get them to think, explore, and see what else is out there. And then the soundtrack. Bryn Star Depths to the theme of Super Metroid, to the Ridley theme, to Norfair. There are just so many good songs in this game that enhance the exploration and elevate this experience. Super Metroid is still up there as one of the best Metroidvanias despite its age, and along with it, I can definitely see why people regard this as one of the best games of all time, because it really is. I feel a bit bad for placing Sekiro at only 6 this year. When I first beat it in January or February, I was convinced that this would be the best game I would play this year. Alas, that's not the case, as the number of other 2023 releases that came by and ended up just being incredible experiences overall, but that doesn't mean Sekiro is a bad game. Far from it. Sekiro is a phenomenal game, and I would go as far to say that in terms of quality alone, it's the most consistently good modern From Software game, and this consistency is super high at all times throughout the game. From the views of the world that keep you amazed, to the storyline that offers different endings in a gripping tale of a shinobi serving his master and following the shinobi way, and the score with the incredible Sekiro flute. I just love the sound of that flute. So, although all these aspects are great, where the game shines above all else is in its combat system. Sekiro's combat is one of the best combat designs in games ever. The skill tree that always has something useful for the players to unlock, like catching thunder or the legendary Mikiri counter, evolves the simple hack and slash sword slash dance the player gets in. Keyword here is dance. Sekiro is in many ways a rhythm game, not in the way where you have to attack to the beat of the song, but where you become one with your blade and understand the movements of your opponent, dodge at the right times and parry their attacks. The game wants you to master their attack patterns from trial and error and understanding what you as the player can do with the tools available. Add a prosthetic arm with tons of unique ways to attack, and you've got yourself a system that leads to different ways to deal with the enemies at hand. And the enemies, the bosses, these are some of the best in gaming. The Guardian Ape, the Monk, Genichiro, Owl, and the greatest final boss I've played, Ishin, the Sword Saint. These bosses put your skills to the test, and after many tries, once you've nailed down the parry windows, dish out your finisher, that feeling of taking down your foes is a feeling like no other. Truly a remarkable game. Before I dive into the top 5, I've got one final honorable mention: Cyberpunk 2077's new expansion, Phantom Liberty. I was debating of whether or not I should put the game on this list, but considering that I had based Cyberpunk 2077 as number 2 last year, it wouldn't be fair to the other games I played this year to have it as an entry on the list 2 years in a row, even though it would be deserving of a placement here. Phantom Liberty is a masterpiece, no doubt about it. It adds a new area which is probably the best location in Night City, adds more to the already incredible score, new side quests to lose yourself in, and new weapons and boss encounters to keep you engaged. But above anything else, Phantom Liberty has one of the greatest narratives that I've ever experienced in a game, with incredible writing, characters, and moments where you really feel the weight and impact of your choices. This expansion is truly an all-time great and truly shows what it means to be an expansion. But with my final honorable mention out of the way, let's get into the top 5, and coming in hot, we have Baldur's Gate 3. I don't think I've spoken a lot about this game this year. At most, I've probably given maybe a few sentences in one of my videos, but that's about it. However, despite me not having mentioned the game a lot this year, oh man, is it good. I can definitely see why people find this game incredible and to be one of the best games that they've ever played. Its turn-based combat is great, offering lots of ways to attack your enemies, interact with the environment around you to get the upper hand, and just lots of choices in how you choose to deal with combat encounters. You could push enemies off a cliff, sneak attack them from afar, or maybe even avoid the whole combat encounter because you were too busy doing other side content that, because of your consequences, removed a certain combat situation. And this side content, the side stuff in the game, is incredible. There's so many small quests that you can do, which aren't small at all and are pretty extensive, and what you choose to do in these quests impacts the narrative later on. You could decide to take out the refugees at the Emerald Grove or save Marina from the old hag, or the opposite of those two quests, and then see how your story changes later on. Everything in this game is connected, really showing the weight of your choices, and choices leads to interactions, which there are plenty of in this game, especially seen in the main party members: Astarion, Karlach, Halsin, and more. The way you speak to them, how you choose to deal with certain situations leads to different outcomes, as you can't please everyone, leading you to get closer with some and further away from others. As a role-playing game, this is truly one of the best for how much choice it gives the player in terms of combat, exploration, and story progression. I really do love this game, but I enjoyed some other games just a bit more this year, which is why it takes my number 5 spot. Well, you don't see this every day. two Metroid games on my top 15 year list. But once I played both these titles, I knew that they would rank pretty high this year. The only question was how high and which would rank higher. The latter of those questions was pretty clear when I beat Metroid Prime. Despite being one of the older games I've beaten this year, it still holds up incredibly well. Let me check, 15 years later. Although it was the remastered version which I played, which from my understanding primarily improved the graphics and added new control features, the game holds up this well because of just how well the game is designed. Metroid Prime is nothing short of magnificent. Its intricate level design, connecting all the main areas in significant ways, making it all feel like a lived-in world, with enemies that make you think of the best ways to use the different weapons of which are varied, play differently and are used in specific situations, to boss fights that are massive puzzles in themselves. And connecting this is the art direction, the world and the beauty it holds, with its jaw-dropping soundtrack that is still one of the best pieces of video game music out there. The vibes, man, the vibes of this game are just amazing. Exploring Talon 4 and seeing areas you might be able to explore later on once you've leveled up is just a joy. Although Metroid Prime is only at number 4 of games I've played this year, it has good reasons to be at number 1 on a different year or being your favorite game of all time. It really is that good. And now with that, let's dive into the top 3, which are all releases from this year. And at number 3, we've got what more can be said about Tears of the Kingdom? It's one of the biggest games ever. In terms of just meaningful areas to traverse and engaging activities to do, this game is up there alongside Elden Ring, and that's saying something. Breath of the Wild was already a massive game, and Hyrule already had a decent amount of stuff to do, but Tears of the Kingdom increases everything from Breath of the Wild by 3. Not only are there more fun activities to engage in, but the map has been expanded to 3 layers with the Sky Islands and the Depths. Although, yes, the Sky Isles aren't the most exciting place to explore, with some basic rewards and decent loot, the view up there is fantastic. Seeing the vast land of Hyrule with the improved draw distance of the Switch is magnificent, and then being able to glide across Hyrule, dive into one of the holes leading to the depths without a single loading screen is wizardry. Alongside Spider-Man 2's impressive fast travel system this year, what Nintendo managed to pull off here in Tears of the Kingdom is just as impressive considering the hardware that it's running on. But now for the actual game itself. I loved it. Every single moment spent in Hyrule was wondrous. From the new enemies and boss encounters to the new abilities Link has for traversal and combat that enhanced the simple yet effective abilities of Breath of the Wild, the incredible soundtrack that went with you across all of Hyrule, to an incredible story that had me curious and excited all the way through. I'll be the first to say that the story wasn't the best story experience this year, but when those big story moments hit, they hit hard. Having done so many things in this new Hyrule, still with tons of stuff left for me to do, I can easily say that I'll be playing Tears of the Kingdom for many years to come. And now, we have arrived at the top 2. These 2 games were brutal for me to rank. Whichever game I put first, I felt giving for leaving the other as only second. However, that's just how lists are sometimes, where there can only be one number 1. Before I unveil the number 2, just know that both these games are exceptional at what they set out to achieve, and I highly recommend both. Now, ladies and gentlemen, at number 2, we have
From what I've gathered, you grew up nice and sheltered with mama's pretty stories and
Man, do I feel bad for putting this game at number 2. First of all, I loved every single moment in this game. It is truly the most unique, intricate, and fascinating video game that I've ever played. It really is. Alan Wake 2 evolves storytelling in ways that seems incomprehensible when written on paper, but when put into practice, it works brilliantly. It mixes live action in ways that games could only dream of doing, makes the story both mysterious and comprehensible in a dual narrative regardless of which order you choose to play the story in, leading to some great revelations and thrilling moments. The narrative had me intrigued all the way from the first moment up until now, nearly 2 months after beating the game, because how much the narrative stayed with me and threw theories and wonder at what is next to come. That's what I call brilliant writing. Sam Lake and the Remedy writing team are narrative experts. But the game isn't just a narrative exposition, it's also got incredible atmosphere and sufficient gameplay. The score and audio design leads to some thrilling moments and horror-filled frights, blended with its art direction, how it sways around, always leaving you guessing as to what's next to come. So much so that Alan Wake 2 has the best sequence that I've ever experienced in a game through the We Sing chapter. The presentation is stunning, with jaw-dropping locations and bright falls, and some crazy ways the world changes around you in a dark place, making it a survival horror masterclass. Although the combat loop is pretty simple, it does a good enough job as acting as a means of progressing the game, keeping you engaged on all fronts at all times. Alan Wake 2 is seriously a masterpiece of a game, and I highly recommend you to try it out. With that said, that leaves one more game on this list, so without further ado, the best game I played this year was a game I didn't know I needed, but I'm so glad that I played it. Armored Core 6 Fires of Rubicon is my favorite FromSoft game. I thought long and hard if it was recency bias maybe that was swaying my position, but having recently gone back and played Elden Ring, I can say that I personally enjoyed Armored Core 6 a lot more. Armored Core 6 has an incredible setting. Rubicon 3 is one of the best worlds to explore, where its bleakness shows beauty in its barren world, with varied landscapes that go on for miles, but also have lots of verticality to it. It's got a score that makes combat sound super exciting, emotional moments that impacts where you are at the story currently that sounds incredible. It's got pretty good voice actors that make you feel for characters despite them never showing their own faces, and the story, with its multiple endings, had me eager to press on and heartbroken at times. Marvelous. But the biggest highlight of all is the gameplay. Armored Core 6, in Sekiro-like many ways, has a super good combat system. From the varied weapons like laser blades, machine guns, shotguns, pistols, plasma blades, rocket launchers, shields, homing missiles, mini grenades, the list is so expansive, and that's not even the customization of the mech itself, from how much health you get to the movement speed and other factors. The game can be tailored to your liking, and because of the challenges bosses put you in, you have to customize your loadout to mix and match until you find something that works, taking on hordes of other mechs, to the 1v1 dogfights of sorts, to the battles against massive machines. The game is just so much fun to play through. I know this game hasn't been talked about a lot this year, but for me personally, this was the game that stuck with me the most. I got my first PlayStation Platinum trophy from this game, and every single moment I spent in the world of Armored Core 6 was time well spent. Armored Core 6 is not just the best action game this year, but I go as far to say one of the best action games ever. And with that, welcome to the end of the video. Man, was this long, but nonetheless, I hope that you enjoyed this wrap up of the year. Thank you so much for watching all the way to the end, and if you enjoyed the video or didn't, a like and a dislike is appreciated, but do let me know down below what are your favorite games that you played this year. Any game goes, from older titles you tried for the first time, to new hit games from 2023, or a game that you wanted to replay again. Comment them down below, as I would love to hear from you all, and if you want to see more from me, a subscribe comes a long way in helping the channel out. Right? With that said, I really, from the bottom of my heart, want to thank you guys so much for all the support this year. From the very first video until now, and thank you to those that have been with the channel since before the year that are still around watching. It really means a lot seeing people enjoy the videos I make, and I hope that I can continue to entertain or enlighten you guys on more video game topics. But with that said, one more thank you from me, and I wish you all a Merry Christmas if you celebrate it, or Happy Holidays if you don't, and a Happy New Year in advance. I'll be taking a 2 to 3 week break from videos, and you can expect videos around the early or mid-January type of period, but once again, thanks for watching all the way through, and I hope to see you in the next one. Have a good rest of your day, night, week, month, and year, and with that, Storm out.